Welcome to the Earthworks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons, and this is the Earthworks podcast. I'm very excited to have, can I call you an old friend? I think I've known you now.
Yes, you can.
20 years now, I think. We have some good stories to tell. But somebody I have tremendous respect for, and actually one of my favorite little gem golf courses in Philadelphia. Byrne is at Llanerch Country Club in the Philadelphia region. You're actually in, Haverford?
In Havertown, actually.
Havertown, okay. Which is just outside of Philadelphia. So you're one of the classic Philadelphia courses built, when was it? Turn of the century, right?
Yeah, it's had a couple different names before it became Llanerch. But we've now proven that they were actually moving earth here in about 1895.
Really?
So it's pretty old. It's pretty old.
What other courses were around you back in 1895? Do you know? I mean,
Overbrook was near us before they moved out, and there were a couple other courses that were around, but they moved out. There's this one real small course a lot of people have never heard of, Marion Golf Club.
I've heard of it, but I've never been there. Yeah. Maybe once.
Marion's about just down the street, Rolling Green. The new Overbrook, from 1920, and then Waynesboro. There's some really, really good.
When was Agronomy built?
When was what?
Agronomy built, do you know?
I think Agronomy was built by Donald Ross, I think, in the early 20s.
So all these courses, I mean, you've got some tremendous neighborhood. I mean, you got Philly Cricket Club not far. You got obviously Marion, some great places real close to you. I mean, some great golf right there in that part of the world. And
we're surrounded by giants.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you're such a gem. And, in the time I've known you, and I knew your course before you got there, but the time since you've been there, you've done some amazing things on that property. And I want to get to a chance to talk about that. But let me get a feel for your background. I mean, we were talking before we got live, and I didn't realize you had two brothers. I knew Greg, but I didn't realize at one point you were all working together at Rolling Green as kids. So you're obviously local.
Yeah, we grew up walking to the golf course from where we grew up in Springfield to go to Rolling Green, and my dad was pretty adamant that we worked, so we were caddying and then greenkeeping at Rolling Green for about 2 years together.
Dad kicks the boys out and says, "Go find a job," and the closest thing was the golf course. And I assume you all fell in love with the idea. I mean, isn't that how it happens?
Not exactly in the beginning, but afterwards, two of us, fell in love with it. The other one was smart and got out of the business. So,
but he had been in the business for a while. He was a superintendent.
No, well, Kevin was just did it for summer work, and then Greg got out of the business for a little bit, and then came back, got his degree out in Oregon, and then became superintendent of Cherry Valley up in New Jersey.
He's in Cherry Valley, New Jersey, right now.
That's where he is currently.
Where'd you go to school? You went to UMass?
No, I went to North Carolina State University.
Oh, I don't know why I think you're a UMass guy, but I have always thought that. Sorry.
That's because I was at the country club at Brookline for a while.
Maybe that had something to do with it. So tell us about Llanerch. I mean, it's a pretty cool little property. I mean, it's not big, but it's got some real features. Who was the original architect?
Alex Finlay did the original design, and then in the 40s during the war, they sold off 9 holes to kind of stay together when it was 27 and condensed down to 18. Then Don Ross, one of his associates, came in and did some work to modernize the 18. So it's had a couple different versions of it, but I would say about 13, 14 holes are pretty darn original, maybe even 16.
Who's the architect on record?
It is Alex Finlay is the founding one, but really it was right now. It really is Brian Schneider. I mean, Brian Schneider from Renaissance Golf is really responsible for how it plays and looks at this time.
So you've recently gone through a whole bunch of changes. I mean, you guys, so I've known you probably, like I said, 20 years. How long have you been there, first of all? I don't even know that now.
23 years.
You have been there for 23 years. So I've known you for probably the whole time you've been there.
Yes,
which is showing our age.
The first person I called.
Yeah, so showing our ages is just kind of
Yes.
pitiful. But let's pretend it's 2 years, but it feels like 2 years. But I mean, it's such a little gem, and I mean, it's not a very big property, right? How many acres are you totally?
Well, it's 129 acres altogether, but really the golf course is on 119 because of the campus of the swimming pool, tennis courts, and
Yeah.
clubhouse. So it's penned in. I mean, we're surrounded by pretty, Route 3 and Route 1. And then we have a street that runs through it. So it's a residential street. So it's packed in there.
Yeah, it's an old neighborhood. So it's an old Philadelphia suburb neighborhood.
Yep.
And then there's this, this little. So let me go back a little bit just because I haven't finished this conversation. But so you get out of UNC. What do you do? What's your career path look like?
After I left NC State, I went and did I had just done growing in Raleigh, North Carolina, or in Cary, North Carolina at Prestonwood, and then I went and did a growing with out at a Hartfeld National. And then from there, went on to become an assistant training at Country Club at Brookline after finishing an internship at Marion Golf Club.
A couple little dog tracks on your resume there. Who you with?
Yeah. I mean, it was Brookline was probably, and Marion had the biggest impression on me.
I bet
being employed with Paul Latchall was very educational. Then having been tutored under Bill Spence at Brookline, he just retired a few years ago. He was there like 36 years. So I was very fortunate.
Were you up there last year for the Open?
No, he left before the Open. He was smart. He got out before the Open.
No, I know that, but were you there for the Open?
Oh, no. I was there for the Ryder Cup.
The Open was spectacular. I had a chance to get up there last year, and it was really quite good. Who were you with at Hartfield when you built that?
I was Bill Kelch.
Oh,
Bill Kelch. It was way back in the day.
And who was at Preston when you were there?
Oh,
that's taking you back now. I know.
Dan something. I don't remember what you're talking about. I had hair back then. I was back in the early 90s.
Yes. Well, that's a good thing, but that's good. So you get to Llanerch. Did you know the property? You must have known it having grown up in the area. You must have known the golf course.
The funny thing is I grew up down the street. My mom still lives just down the street, and I didn't know anything about the golf course.
Had you ever been on it?
Very little. I had driven by it a couple times, I think on my way to go into my internship at Marion. Now I didn't know much about it, but when I was the superintendent at Jericho National, this opportunity opened up, and I don't know if you know, I'm sure you know Dick Bader.
I've heard about him.
Called me and asked me if I'd be interested, and I looked at it and went, it looks like really needs a lot of help. So it's a good opportunity.
So let's talk about that. I mean, your first impression walking on, I mean, and I don't want to sound disrespectful, but I can only imagine your first experience, your first impression walking on that property 23 years ago. I mean, it had to be pretty unique.
Well, it was dark during the day. I mean, it was covered in trees, so the whole thing was shaded.
Yeah, it was pretty dark.
I called you because our fairways were purple.
Yeah.
Didn't have any drainage. It's just been, just didn't have the resources at the time, and the club had really made a commitment to doing it the right way. And so we went on the path of like trying to at least get irrigation installed, and then start the program of selling fumigating the golf course. We fumigated it in 2004, greens, tees, and fairways.
So you felt it was in that bad a shape that you needed to really go in and just kind of complete renovation.
Well, the ice storms of 1995 had killed all the perennial poania in the Philadelphia area, most of it.
Yeah.
It filled back in with annual poa, so then that's how we got anthracnose. So once we couldn't kill the anthracnose, I said to the club, I can get rid of your anthracnose. I have to kill the host.
Now, there you go.
So we converted to bentgrass.
Let me ask you this, though. You go into this property, and again, I'm not saying this in any disrespect, but
I get
it wasn't the prettiest property you'd ever seen. What was your conversation in the interview process? I mean, obviously you saw that there was a gem here, because there is a gem there. I mean, it's a beautiful property, and obviously a lot of that is because of you. But you saw something there when you were walking it for the first time. How did the interview process go? And did you have to, basically fight for for what your vision was at the time? I mean, how did that process go when you came in there? And I say this because I'm sure a lot of folks in our business, find themselves in the same position where they walk into an interview, they look at a property, they don't, maybe they see a gem, maybe they don't. I can only imagine you saw something, but how did you present it to the interviewing committee when you went through there?
Well, I think first thing, it's a great question. My big selling point was that you have great bones. The property has great bones, but its skin is tired. And that was what I was going to really work on, was trying to get the skin back together. Like I always say, the golf course is all a series of connective tissue. You have to start just working to get all the connective tissue working correctly, which is through irrigation, drainage, and, sun management. So kind of sold them on the positive parts because there was a lot of positives. And Mr. Valentine, who was the superintendent at Marion for forever, his son came over and said to me, his dad always said it was a sleeping giant, it just needed to be awoken. And I used that line in the interview, that it just needed to be awoken, and that I was more than happy to wake it out of its slumber.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to present it. And they obviously probably felt the same when they were interviewing you. I mean, you came in with a decent resume, but you had to have a vision in order to I can only assume they were looking for a way to take this to the next level when they brought you in.
I don't think they really knew the depths of what the problems were, but yeah, I mean, they definitely made a decision to go commit to, like, all right, we're going to have to spend some extreme capital to get there. And they have. I mean, I've done 2 renovations here.
Yes, I know. I know. Yeah, you've been a busy man since you've been there for 23 years. So you walk in, you're now the superintendent. How long did it take you before you start thinking to yourself, what the hell did I get myself into on this thing?
30 days.
That's not bad.
I remember exactly 1 month later, I was like, wow, what did I get myself into?
Right, there you go.
Because, it was just to the point where everything was not right. And so I just sat down in my office one day, closed the door and said, all right, let's prioritize a list of what needs to get done.
Good.
And the first thing was water. Like, I can't grow anything without water. So we worked on water, and then from there was the tree work. And then I started doing fumigation plots within a year, because I knew the annual annual was next spot.
So let's talk
Philadelphia.
water.
You have to remember, Philadelphia is now Baltimore, and Baltimore is now DC, and DC is Raleigh. All the cities are one city hotter. So I mean, it's hot.
We're the Mid-Atlantic, and we're in this horrible transition zone. And you're right, Philadelphia is now Baltimore, and it's right. When did that start happening? When did you start realizing that you were getting this really horrible summer weather?
I think you could start really seeing it just at the end of the aughts. When I grew up near Llanerch, so I remember as a kid, a little bit of rain, heavy storm, a little bit of rain, a little dryness, a little bit of rain. Now, each year it becomes more drought, heavy storm, drought, heavy storm. And that's where we're at now. And that's right now, I'm like, we only have like 8 inches of rain. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, last summer was horrible.
Like 2 weeks.
What was snow like when you were a kid? I mean, there had to be a lot more snow.
Tons of snow.
Yeah.
Tons of snow.
And now we're not saying, I don't think we got, did you get any snow last summer?
I think we got last winter, we had like 0.1, which is devastating because it's so good for the grass.
Yeah.
So no, it's, I'll tell you what, the job is becoming much more difficult environment.
Yeah. Mother Nature has not been helping us. And like you said, I mean, and this is an important piece. I mean, I think the hardest place to grow grass in my career has always been that Washington, D.C., but it's now Philadelphia. I mean, you guys are, what 20 years ago was Washington, D.C. and that whole area. So we had ambient temperatures last year in 110, 115 degrees. Did you really?
Heat indices. Yeah.
Wow. That makes growing grass easy, doesn't it? Heat
indices were in that. And we had soil temps of like 95.
Yeah.
It gets pretty tough.
Yeah, I can only imagine. What's the POA situation like these days? I mean, how much has the POA come back in the last number of years?
I would say on greens we got about 4 or 5%. Keep plugging it out.
Yeah, so you get there. The first thing you do is you make your list, and the first thing on the list is water. So what does that mean to you, and how do you attack it?
Well, I brought in Brian Vinchase, who was a irrigation consultant, so he
Smart
could
move.
describe it at a different level to membership in a more technocratic way, because he had a lot more gravitas than I did. With he had like 20 years of experience with this stuff, or 30. So he did a great design, tested our old system, told him it stunk, which we already knew, and then for the feed, designed it. So that was the big help. And then you were right behind that, because I was like, well, the water's just there, but then it was the agronomy going, well,
Yeah.
you need water, but you need to know what's going on, because as you remember, walking the course, it's a mess.
Yeah, you can, if you don't mind me telling, I tell this story. I don't know if you know this, and I think I've probably shared this with you a couple of times, but you taught me an awful lot. I mean, those first couple of times when I walked that property with you. But if you don't mind me telling the story, and feel free to tell me that I'm full of shit, because I could be embellishing this. But I remember walking the fairways, and it was purple, and it
Yep.
was what, August, maybe September. It might have been September.
It was September.
Yeah, and I remember asking you, I said, do you have phosphorus deficiencies? And your response to me was, no, I don't have phosphorus deficiencies. I've got, it's just all these old German varieties of bent grass, and they just turn purple every year. And I had the soil test in my back pocket, if you remember this. And I pulled it out, and sure as hell, you had 1,000 pounds of excess phosphorus in your fairways. And so this is your fairways we're talking about, and they're purpling in September. And, we're scratching our head, both wondering, is it the grass? What is it? So what I did, and I remember this vividly, on the fairway, I called Susan Shaner at Logan Labs, and I said, we've got this fairway 6. Can we run a water-soluble paste extract on that? And the next day we got it back. And sure as anything, that 1,000 pounds of excess, we had virtually zero phosphorus mobility working in those fairways. So you had more phosphorus than you could possibly deal with, but we were getting zero mobility out of it. So you and I talked about this, and we started making some changes. And, and that's those soils in Philadelphia, high magnesium, tough on calcium, very tight clay. You had a lot of trees. Now this is in the teen or early, I don't even know what year it was, probably a year after you got there. But it was, you had a lot of trees. So there was a lot of things working against you on those soils. How did I do on that? Was I close to what your memory of that was?
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah, I think what happened was, after what your description was correct. Actually, Joel, the only thing is you got the date wrong. I think it was 2002 when we were walking.
Oh, wow. So it was further back.
I remember you had me put some phosphorus out, and the fairways turned green.
Yeah. Shocking, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it was just like overnight.
Yeah. And then I think we started getting some carbon in there. Yeah. We got a little carbon in there, and you started really making some changes. And I remember talking to you years and years, after that, and you never really saw that purpling effect again. And, and it was interesting, but it was true. I mean, that was one of the things in my career that really, really opened up my eyes. And I'm always been grateful to you for helping me understand and discover that. But it was really, it really kind of sent me down the road of understanding, if I can look at water-soluble paste extracts along with standard tests, I get more information. And in your case, we had more phosphorus than we could deal with. It just wasn't mobilizing. So you started to change that, and you made some good changes in there, which is good.
Yeah, it's without a doubt. I mean, we still do soil tests with you every year. I mean, we base our program on your results.
Yeah, and it's been good. So let's talk. So you got water done. So you got a new irrigation system back. What year was the irrigation project, the first one?
2001.
Okay. And have you changed that since? Have you gone through a second one since then?
No, but we're probably within like 5 or 6 more years.
Okay, so you're working off of.
We have other things we need to do right now.
You're working off that original irrigation system that you went to when you built this thing.
Yeah, well, I did all the green salutes just in the last 2 years with the renovation and outside collar system. So we're around greens. We're all brand new.
Everything's new. Let me go back to your list. Your second thing I think you said was lights, trees. You must have taken down a zillion.
Yeah,
trees.
we needed to. we took down a whole bunch of trees that were not indigenous to the area, so that helped out a lot, and it also made the course look better.
Yeah.
And we did it over a slow period of time.
Did
We
you have
didn't want
any?
to shock everybody, but
I was gonna say, what was the pushback? Was the pushback from the members? Sorry about that, everybody. We've been having some technical difficulties with internet, but I was just so I was asking you. I loved your list. You came into the club, you saw this property that clearly needed some TLC. You saw you had the vision. I love the fact that 30 days in, you were a little nervous about taking this job, but again, anybody that's ever been on your property recently would know that this is truly a Philadelphia gem that's well worth it. But so you built your list. Your first one was irrigation. I love the fact that you brought in an irrigation specialist. You brought somebody in that could help the club members discover the need for this irrigation system. And I can only assume this was a pretty big investment back in the day. Was that a problem, the actual investment of irrigation? Did you have a struggle getting that through, or did it go through fairly quickly when you were talking with the club members?
To be honest with you, once we gave the presentation, it cost us about $1.1 million back in the day, but they passed it 93%. The vote was affirmative 93%. So they were all for it. And then it got us momentum, because once they saw that the irrigation actually improved the property, when I came back 3 years later and asked for, hey, by the way, I need like another 1.5 and I need to close the course for 10 months to fumigate, again, got in the 90 percentile for the vote. They're really a pretty great group of people, the membership. I'm not just saying it to pander to them, but they gave me a lot of rope to hang myself in a certain respect. But once they saw results, they were like, okay, all right, you can go do what you need to do.
Well, obviously they had some faith in you, because they spent 1 point something on irrigation, and I'm sure they were. I mean, and your club is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's fairly blue collar. I mean, is that a fair description, or am I not being
No,
fair?
not really. It's not a blue collar club. It had that moniker back probably in the 80s and 90s. It really isn't now. It's a series. It's a diverse group of really a lot of young professionals and older business owners. And, it's a very, and that's not to be critical of blue collar, but it's become a lot. It's really pretty white collar, if anything.
But it's a true country club. You've got all sorts of membership there. So you've got people.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We have like about, when it's all said and done, we got about 725 members across all the
Wow.
categories. We have a waiting list, a long waiting list.
I bet.
We're really in good shape. It's really a good place to be employed. It really is.
Well, you've been there long enough. I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
You got through. So when you did the irrigation system the first time, were you closed for a period of time? Did you shut the?
No, we did the irrigation. We did the irrigation as they played.
Okay.
We just pulled pipe as they played. We had an extra hole that I built, little 100-yard hole.
I remember that. Yeah.
And we just took one hole out of commission each day.
So we had started talking a little bit before we ran into some technical difficulties. Your next checklist was trees, and you started cutting trees down. Did you have any problems with the community, with the township, with the county, with anybody cutting trees down?
No, at that time, it still wasn't that big a deal. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania nor the township were that interested at the time. I would think those days are probably pretty much over. But in our case, Llanerch wasn't blessed with a bunch of specimen type trees. We had a lot of non-indigenous trees that had gone through their life cycles. So I wasn't cutting down anything like that was really that nice looking either. So, I mean, we're at the point where we're pretty much done removing trees.
How many trees did you take down?
I never really counted. I would say about 600.
That's pretty good on a little property like yours.
Yeah, but I've also planted I probably planted 300 of them. I just planted them in areas where you should plant them, opposed to putting
away from the green.
Turf.
Yeah, so you could get light on the fairways, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you remember, walking this course was dark.
Yes,
Now
I do
it's
remember that.
really bright. Now it's very, very bright. You need to come back. You haven't been here.
Yeah, I haven't been there for a while. I admit, I would love to get back down and see it. And
Mhm.
and you've done a lot of stuff in the last number of years. What was the back to your checklist? So you did water, light. Was there a third major issue you wanted to jump on? Oh, you wanted to fumigate.
Yeah, then I just was wanting to kill the piranha. So that we were at a point where the bunkers were in really bad shape. The fairways are a mix of rye, poa, Bermuda, bent grass. I just said we needed to just change everything, get the grass line straightened out. And we did it. And they loved it until it had aged, to the point in about 2019, the bunkers had fabric lining and they were all deteriorating. And they were like, let's just redo the bunkers. I'm like, if you're going to do the bunkers, you might as well do the green complexes. And if you're going to do the green complexes, you might as well do a full renovation. And that started the ball rolling.
So you took them from fixing the bunkers to a complete renovation. So again, in an attempt to help people in the business, how do you do that? How do you get from the guys want to talk about changing some bunkers out and you completely renovated the property? I mean, what's the conversation in the clubhouse around that one?
First things first, it's a series of smaller conversations with different people. Right. You have to talk to different people all the time on the first tee, in the men's grill, in the locker room, and short conversations. But I think when it came down to leadership was showing them pictures of how big their greens were in the past. And I was like, well, you're going to get more pin places. Variety is the spice of life. If you're going to do the bunkers, you're going to want to do it to the green. And that gave us the green expansion. And I think they just got tired of me and just said, all right, go get an architect.
Just get this guy out of here. He's bugging us to know that. And every time he comes in here, it costs us $1 million.
Oh, it cost them more than that time. It was like 2 point. Well, now it's cheap. We did the course in 2 years for 2.5, just as, COVID was hit. Now I hear renovation, at least 7 million.
Let's go back to the fumigation. So what year was that when you fumigated?
2004. August 7th, 2004.
Oh, was it that early? Okay. And you shut down for how long?
Until just before Memorial Day, 2005.
Oh, so you were shut down. I didn't realize you were shut down for a year.
Oh, well,
almost
8 months.
Almost
8 months. I was fully grown in 10 weeks. I had all the fairways, greens, and tees grown in 10 weeks, but you needed to go through winter and mature. So, then 2005 was a horrific weather year. We took a step back.
Yeah.
We got monster. We just had a ton of play. And then everything kind of matured and we were in good shape. But this renovation that we just did in 20 and 21, that was, we didn't need to fumigate. That was really more greens expansions than anything else.
Right. So let's talk about, let me go back to the fumigation. What time of year did you do that?
August. You want to do it in August. We used basamid. We didn't use methyl bromide.
Okay.
We did the opposite of most people. We did basamid everywhere.
So you basamided the whole property. So you shut down in August, you shut down and then you started growing, you started planting when you
I fumigated like on the 8th and 9th. It took us about 8 days to fumigate. And then we were seeding the 9th day.
Oh, wow. Really? That quickly?
You have to.
That fast. Yeah.
No, you have to, because you have to meet the heat.
Yeah. So you had everything pretty much seeded out before the end of the fall. Everything was set in place.
Oh no, we were grown in by end of October.
Wow.
We were at greens height, we were at fairway height, we were at tee height.
But you didn't open until Memorial Day?
Yeah, because it just needed time to mature. All the grass needed time to mature.
So I can only imagine, again, the politics on that is that you got a property that looks playable, from a visionary standpoint, but you're keeping everybody off until Memorial Day. That must have been another, challenge within the clubhouse. How did that go?
Well, actually, Joel was actually real lucky because the other clubs in the area, a lot of other clubs or some clubs are starting to fumigate. So we had what's called a reciprocal program. So they were just called and they were getting to play all these courses in Philadelphia. So they were playing courses they never did. So they were having a ton of fun. But you're right, about mid-April, they were like,
I'd like to get home.
Yeah, it was time.
Well, that's not a bad deal, though, if you get to go play some of the courses that are in your neighborhood.
They got to play some really great places. As you said, Philadelphia has great golf.
So
So the second renovation, we did 9 holes at a time, so they could at least play 9 holes twice and get 18 holes in.
there you go. So you did let's go through chronologically. You did so after the Bassamid experience, you started to do some small renovations. And then you did the last one just recently. Is that how? Do I have the timeline right? You did a little.
Well, I'd say 2001 we did the irrigation. 2004 we did the fumigation. 2007 we did the range, and then I became co-general manager in 2010, and then I built a brand new pool house. Then 2013 we redid the clubhouse, so I had to watch that construction, and then then we did the golf course in 19, 20, 21, and then I just built 2 huge pavilions up at the range last year.
Well, let me come back to the whole GM thing because I think that's fascinating too. But
Mhm.
let me stay on the golf course. So you get back to the renovation, and who are you working with there architecturally?
In 2019, it was, and 20 was Brian Schneider from Renaissance Golf.
So Brian did a lot of that work. I mean, you've done some. I mean, I have seen that. Now that was pretty impressive. I mean, you did a lot of work in there, and it really looks like a different golf course now. And it's,
I think Brian and Blake Hogan with his partner or another shaper with them. They did just such great work.
Yeah.
The club gave them a lot of latitude. They made the course Llanerch and not anybody else. And they gave me the ability to use Zoysia on their bunker banks because they were so steep.
Yeah.
And because of the heat, the tall fescue was dying.
Yeah.
And so we used Zoysia faces, and that's been a big help for us.
It's funny because a lot more people in Philadelphia are bringing in things like Zoysia Bermudas. And, I mean, like you started off saying, we're now Baltimore, we're now Washington in terms of climate. And I think you're going to see a lot more of these warm season grasses, especially on bunker faces. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And I think it looks good. Even when it's dormant, it still has a real unique look to it. What was the reception of the changes that you made with the members?
That's a great question. I would say it was really 2 tribes. One which was the overwhelming majority, was they loved it. They just thought it was fantastic. There was a smaller group that were not happy, and it was only because of the change. And it was real simple. When I did the renovation, I erased their memories. They had grown up in the course. They had stories about how they played these holes, these trees they were behind, these bunkers they had been in, how they won that match or lost the match, and stories, and all that's gone. And I understood it, and I was appreciative of it. And then, but now I can already see as the course now is in its 3rd year since renovation, they're now forgetting about the old course and accepting the new course as its own.
How long did it take? 3 years?
Well, it's taken about 3 years, but I would say any superintendent that's listening to this podcast will know that you can never get 100% people to enjoy your work.
Yeah. No, you can't come close to it in a lot of places. But, it's funny. I don't know if I ever heard that story, but you said it so eloquently that, they had memories of the property, and you took those memories away from them. That's a real talent to be able to work through that.
Especially when you're walking around all day, every day, you're walking around and they look at you, and you're the person that's responsible for it, good or bad. And you have to learn to be both, be able to articulate the reason why, but also understand you have to appreciate and listen to what they have to say about the past. And I understand that.
Yeah, I know. I completely understand. It's like taking your family house and kind of completely gutting it and rebuilding it, and it's not your family house anymore. But it ends up being something of great memory as well. But you did such a phenomenal job, and you opened the place up, and it really is quite a golf course, and each hole is unique. I mean, it's unique in that Philadelphia market because you're not playing driver 6-iron on that property at all. You got every club in the bag, and at Llanerch right now, which is kind of
right.
fun.
And it's battle tested. We had the Pennsylvania Amateur last year, and we had the 3rd highest score in history of the Pennsylvania Amateur. The only courses that had scores that were courses you'd say are harder than us was Oakmont and Marion. So it definitely takes, and I didn't trick it out or anything like that. I didn't grow the rough up to 6 inches or the greens at 14.
Right.
And they still, it's a tough, it's still, when it needs to be, it's still going to be a tough course. It can be a really tough course.
How much input did you have personally in the redesign?
Every day. Talk to Brian and Blake, and but you have to remember, I wake up as a greenkeeper. They wake up as architects. When it really push came to shove it about architecture, it's their call. When it came to agriculture or protecting the club's history, that's when I would put my foot down. I mean, we had our disagreements, but
I was going to say there had to be a couple disagreements. Well, anything big that you wouldn't want to talk about? I mean, what was some?
No, I have no fear of saying it. A good example was number 17, which is an iconic par 3 here, and they routed the bunkers out the first time, and I just didn't like it even a little bit, and it concerned me. It just looked too different, and I explained it to them. I went through it with them, and they both walked away, came back the next day, and redid the work completely, and it came out fabulous. So they were good. They were good partners. I have high esteem for both of those gentlemen. Brian, they're both artists, but Brian is really he has the ability to really see what he wants, and he can make a really good argument. And if he makes a great argument, then hey, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Proof's in the pudding. The course has been well received.
How about that hole? Is that hole well received now by the members?
I would say it's probably everybody loves it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a signature hole, isn't it?
Yeah, that or number 12. I mean, that's the good thing about their work. Brian did such good work. You could argue for a lot of holes being the best hole.
Yeah, you really could. So let's talk about your career moves within the club. So when did you start moving, if you will, upstairs into the GM's roles?
I started becoming, the club approached me in 2010 to be co-general manager. I was with a brilliant woman named Cindy Ertner, who she did all the food and beverage, HR, and accounting. And I did the rest of the physicality, the pool, the tennis, and so on and so forth. And then she retired in 20, and the pro that we had, Chris Wilkinson, who was also from the Country Club of Brookline, assumed the position of co-general manager. And Chris took all the roles of Cindy, and actually took some of the stuff that I was on my plate, and helped me out. And so we have a very good symbiotic relationship where it's not about title. It's about what do we need to do to advance the club.
Right. How do you get it going?
Yeah, because you know what, really, honestly, we're in boomer years right now. I mean, you've been in the business a long time. You've seen how the golf industry's ebbed. Right. Right now, it's going to come to an end. So I like to say,
let's hope not.
Well, it's a cycle.
You're right, but I agree with you. But let's hope.
The economy is going to go. So Chris and my philosophy is we're in a race to the recession. We need to build up as best we can, because right now we have a lot of people want to be members. If the economy goes down, which it will, they'll become value shoppers. So you want to have the best amenities, right, to compete against your other country clubs.
Now, did you know that when you started, redoing the clubhouse and doing all this other physical stuff? I mean, were you looking at the future and looking at, maintaining your position within that market?
Without a doubt. I felt like, again, we're surrounded by giants. So we're never going to have Marion's Golf Club. Our golf course. We're never going to have agronomy's, history.
Right.
But I love Llanerch, and a lot of people too. We just need to just personify who we were and show people this is a great property. If you look here, you'll love it. And we do. We're a fun place. We're really a fun country club.
Yeah, and again, I didn't mean to sound critical, but that's kind of what I was getting at when I was saying blue collar. I mean, it was always the atmosphere has always been festive. It's always been, let's get together, have some fun. It's not been real stuffy. It's not ever been a real blue blood kind of an environment. It's just been a lot of fun. They love playing golf there. They love having a couple cocktails, which is always a good thing. And it just seemed like, it's the kind of place that you would want to go to, as opposed to some of these other places. Not to be critical or
no, I get it.
piss anybody off, but that's the great thing about Llanerch is that you really have this great culture within the club, and I assume that everybody gets along well, and that it is really that kind of a family culture, right?
It is. It's we've never been called stoic.
No, you haven't.
That is definitely for sure. But for people who don't know Lanark, the 18th green is, I am not kidding you, like 7 paces from the clubhouse.
Yeah.
So we have people and we have a big like a big horseshoe of seating area around it. So when we have big tournaments, everybody's outside watching it, and it gets, people are vocal, but it's all in fun.
Yeah, exactly.
It's as you know, Joel, from coming here, it really, honestly, I've been employed at a lot of clubs, and they were all fun. I mean, they all had their own personality, and they're all, special in a certain way. But this place is it's just a great place to hang out. And I just like the camaraderie that the membership has.
Yeah, no, it really is quite a special place. So what is it like being a co-general manager? I mean, that just sounds like it's set up for failure to me, but it sounds like you guys have really made it work. But explain that to anybody listening that might be thinking about moving up the ladder, if you will. I mean, what was that like, and what's the challenges of that position you're in now?
Well, I would say that if you're offered the opportunity, you really should take it, as long as you can keep a foot on the golf course. I'm still a golf course superintendent. I still have my office at grounds maintenance facility. I don't have an office in the clubhouse. You have to check your ego at the door. You have to realize that you have somebody who's your partner in crime, and that you're going to work together. And Chris, having been at Brookline, like myself, and Brookline had a fabulous management system and management team with the former general manager, Dave Shag, and Brendan Walsh, who's the professional, and Bill Spence. They were always very well-tempered, very worked together. So we kind of keep that going. And you just have to realize that you're both of you are committed to trying to get the thing right the first time. And I find it to be easy. I really enjoy it. I don't mind doing it, and it gives you some more authority than maybe you have when you're superintendent. It's easy when you're driving to work and you can talk to the general manager when you're still, at the same time, because you are that general manager, so you can make decisions.
I'm talking to myself all the time.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Did it help you professionally when you moved up? I mean, a lot of us in this industry kind of get bored and staying in the same rut. I can only imagine that really changed your day-to-day a lot, changed your work profile a lot. I mean, I would assume, knowing you, that it probably kept you really involved.
I would say that it didn't change my agricultural life. It added to it.
Oh, good.
It got me involved in more construction and design work, which I was always interested in. And, to be part of hiring an architect to do the clubhouse over again. We spent $7.5 million. So it was, at that time in 2013, that doesn't sound like much now, but it was then.
Well, it's a lot even now, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we gutted the whole place, and to have the ability to do that day to day, work on the golf course, do the thing, and then get over to the clubhouse, it was great. It was a lot of pressure, sure. But if you're looking for growth down the line and you have that opportunity, you need to take it. Unless you really are just committed to greenkeeping, and never expanding. I think, wouldn't you want to have more ability to influence people's decision making?
Yeah, and you're involved in the day-to-day, and you're involved in the growth. I mean, what you've been able to do and be involved in the transition of this club, and again, I have nothing but the utmost of respect for what you've done in the club. But coming in from where you were to where you are, I mean, and having that vision. Everybody should be able to look at their property and hopefully be able to sell the idea of improving the property the way you have. And it's been such a transition from head to toe, obviously from the golf course standpoint, but also all the buildings that you've done. You built a couple other things. You said the pool house and other things as well.
Did the pool house in 10,
wow.
But then we have this huge patio I had designed back in
I remember
2013.
Yeah.
Well, I put a pavilion on it now.
And, I haven't seen the pavilion. I'll have to. I'll be down soon. I promise.
You have to come. So we built a bar pavilion I said to Chris, I go, I think this would be a great place for a bar. It overlooks the golf course. He's like, it's a great idea. He goes, but we need another pavilion to the left of it, and we'll make pizza. And last Sunday, we sold 77 pizzas.
Wow.
And the bar was open for 10 hours. So the pavilions, it's not unusual for us to sell on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, anywhere between 60 and 70 pizzas a night.
Wow, that's impressive. How involved are you in socializing with the members? Are you
great amenity to the club?
Yeah. Are you rubbing elbows? Are you playing golf with members? I mean, how involved are you now as superintendent and GM with the membership?
I see members every day. I talk to members every day. I have an executive board committee meeting tonight. I've been to every board meeting for the last 23 years. So I have a lot of interaction. I think you need to be able to balance your life and not just be at the golf course every day, but you have to pick your spots, and you have to know when to go in and when not to. But I try to talk to my goal is to talk to 10 members a day.
Oh, good. That's a great goal.
I think if you can say I can talk to 10, and not the same 10, if you get a little bit of overlap, that's fine, but you try to talk to as many members as you can. I don't play that much golf with them. I maybe once a year, but that's only because we just have so much going on.
Right. So let me ask you, you had to have had some run-ins with a couple members, and I don't want anything specific, but how do you manage that? I mean, and again, I'm looking for advice for anybody else, because you've got such a good handle on this. So when you run up against somebody that just wants to get into your face, what's the best strategy?
Well, the first things first is you have to create a culture where people have to realize, the membership has to realize you are here to serve and not to be a servant.
Excellent.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is that I'm just like you. And I feel like all of us have been working hard enough that we should be able to have the ability to make a mistake. And if you can give me the leeway to make a mistake, we'll be in a better place. And then really what it comes down to is go into the leadership at committee level and board level and just reiterate to them, bad behavior is unacceptable. Yeah. If you were to do that behavior at a restaurant or somewhere else, would it be acceptable? No. Then why is it acceptable here? I've been very fortunate. The membership here is very respectful, and so is leadership, but that's a culture, and that's what you have to build. But yeah, I've had a couple run-ins here and there. My biggest thing is to de-escalate it. I always say to someone who's that upset, I kind of make a joke and say, if that's your biggest problem, you're doing all right. Just remember, you're playing golf today. I'm working, so you won. You know what I mean? So that usually resolves most of the issue.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're growing grass and we're playing golf, if you think about
I'm not saving lives.
Yeah, we're not cutting out hearts and stuff like that. It's crazy. So what's next on your list of things to do here? I mean, I can't imagine you're done. Knowing you, I can't imagine that you're not figuring out where you go next.
Funny you say that. I'm thinking about building a 10,000 square foot putting green, redoing the range, ripping the pool out and putting a new pool in, redoing the parking lots, building a separate hitting room with simulators. Now we're looking at making another major investment in the property, and then after all that, then maybe take the whole first floor of the clubhouse and redesign it.
You've been here, so you're going to be there for another 23 years with that long laundry list of things. I mean, it just never seems to end, which is great. I mean, I can't imagine you're bored.
No, that's the last thing I am. And I like it that way. And, I'll stay here as long as they'll keep me. So, I mean, I don't plan to work forever, but I definitely, when you're doing these type of projects, it keeps everything interesting, doing a member guest is all fun and dandy, but, after you've done 23 of them, it's member guest. Doing foundation work is much more fun.
Building new greens and pools and buildings and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I gotta end this up by asking you a couple of things. And one thing you and I talk a lot about is, what wine are you drinking these days? You and I have we tend to spend a lot of time talking about wine together. And you've
I've
taught
been
me a lot about German wines, which I've always been grateful on.
I've been really sticking to cava.
You
I
said that to me the other day. Yeah.
I can't the cavas, any cava I'm in. I think that's that, and I've been kind of trying to reintroduce myself to Pilsner, to getting back to beer.
Oh, there you
Drinking a
go.
couple of the Pilsners. Good old fashioned Czech Pils is always good to me. There's so many good local breweries now. So
Oh yeah, in this part of the country, we got a brewery, every 10 feet and things of that nature. So which is good. Well, listen, my friend, I'm sorry we had so much technical difficulty, but I
it's
think we
my
got a
fault.
lot of really great stuff out of this, and we'll figure out a way to get it all together. And I want to thank you. Like I said to you, I've learned an awful lot from you over the years that I've used in my career and has helped me a lot. Like I was saying, that whole issue with the phosphorus just really blew my mind. I mean, that was really the first experience that I really had up close and personal when we saw 1,000 pounds of excess phosphorus and then zero phosphorus mobility, and what you were able to do to remedy that over a couple of years was pretty impressive. But I wouldn't have, that was an eye opener for me, and I've leaned on that over my career. So I owe you gratitude, and always will. So that's why I wanted to have you on to say thank you, and I look forward to getting down and seeing the place again as soon as I can.
Yeah, and let's not forget that I'm very thankful too for what you've done. Remember, we forgot to say, when we were doing the renovation for the green expansion, you were the person I called about, that transition zone and what are we going to do about the soils
Yeah.
for the extensions? And I remember you saying, and I've used the line a lot, why would you take great greens and surround them with a collar of sand?
Right. Yeah.
You know what? It was very, very good advice. And I appreciate all that you've taught me.
So what did you do there? You ended up amending the collars, right?
You know what I ended up doing? I stole from you. I took some of the soils from those areas
Yeah.
and blended it with what was the closest match was 622, and blended them and put them in. And I'm proud to say, I don't want to jinx myself, but our extensions look really good. I mean,
Yeah,
they've been real
no.
good. And by the way, I put Earthworks 545 on them too, so that helps out too.
It never hurts to get a little carbon into the system.
No, you were
Mother
right.
Nature needs to feed as well,
No, you were always right about that stuff, I have to say. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your time on the Earthworks podcast, Brendan. And hopefully, like I said, I'll get down and see if we can open a bottle of wine together and hang out on one of your patios there. watch
Okay.
watch the
Thanks
golfers swing by.
again. I appreciate your time. You're a good
Thanks,
friend.
Brandon. And folks, that is the Earthworks podcast. We will be back next week with another version. Please subscribe and stay with us. We'll be back again with somebody else next week.